When you wish to go to sea and cruise for pleasure along the English coast, what more romantic place could be found in which to build your boat than ancient Rye, the venerable Cinque Port of cobbled streets and clustering houses that dominates the Rumney Marsh? Anyway, that was what we decided, and as our boat took shape, our judgment proved to be well-founded. With timbers staunch and planking true, the hull took shape under skillful hands. And equally happy was our choice of power unit for our trim little ship. Compact in design, in every way a seaman-like job, these engines of ours were carefully installed. Yes, 2 of them, to develop 18 brake horsepower each. They were Tritons, built by Austin, and that is guarantee enough for any sailor that there would always be power to fight a headwind or an adverse tide, always power to reach a safe anchorage, for Austin dependability is vital at sea. And what a great day was that when our brave little vessel exchanged the gloom of the boat builder's yard for the brightness of a fine spring morning. It was christened in true sailor fashion. How anxious was that moment when she moved down the slip to meet the water. So she was launched, and as she floated we observed ancient custom and drank with the worthy boat builders, sea services of Rye, to our good ship the Ettrick, soon to set sail on her maiden voyage for the rocky coast of Cornwall. At Plymouth, our cruise of the Cornish coast began. We hoisted our burgee and with all aboard cast off the wharves. Then away down Plymouth Sound, with a fresh breeze and the engines purring below our feet. Our helmsman was at the wheel, and our passengers were on deck. We took a good breath of the brisk sea air as we watched the land recede. Our course was that of Drake, the course of all adventurers who sail from Plymouth, southwest by south. Forging ahead along this romantic coast, we passed the old-time port of Looe, the first of these famous Cornish towns, with its old bridge linking East Looe to West Looe across the river. Steering for Polperro, often accounted the most picturesque of Cornish villages, we entered the tiny harbour with its cluster of fishermen's cottages. There was a smell of fish and a wheeling of gulls screaming as they fought over the choicest titbits. That was Polperro, and to us Polperro meant Cornwall. But like all true voyagers, we longed to be at sea again, with the wind singing through the shrouds, a pleasant whisper from the cutwater, and a white weight to mark our progress. So we voyaged on. We next put into Foy, one of the oldest and busiest ports of Cornwall, where the china clay is shipped. Like all Cornish towns, Foy is a marvel of compactness, a town packed within the dimensions of a village, with its houses considerably more than nodding acquaintances across the narrow street. Leaving Foy, we passed a wonderful coastline with bluff headlands clad with trees. Occasionally, too, we saw stretches of sandy beach where the sun and sea worshippers were congregated in happy crowds. But if you think of cruising along this rugged coast, remember that skillful navigation is a first requirement, and secondly, a seaworthy boat that will answer to the helm without any hesitation at all. For most of Cornwall's harbours require a most careful approach and an intimate knowledge of the tides. As we neared Mevagissey, we learnt to appreciate the willing response of our engines to the slightest change of throttle opening. When our anchorage had been made with safety, we found ourselves in an unspoilt Cornish fishing village, full of twisting passages and a conglomeration of angles, beautiful in their conclusion. If you wander through its quaint streets, you will see on every hand the evidence of a livelihood gained at sea, and meet many an old sort. Of these was Uncle Joe, busily building boats with steady hands and a keen eye at the age of 95. Mevagissey, strangest of names, a village that all who visit Cornwall find it difficult to forget. Now, sooner or later, if you have willing engines in your boat, the wind gets wind of it, so to speak, and decides after all that it's quite useless to be fitful and perverse. And so it happened with us. As we left Mevagissey, a good sailing breeze sprang up, a breeze favourable to our voyage to the south and west. We lost no time in setting sail. The merry, bubbling rush of the cutwater had now an accompaniment in the creaking of blocks and the humming of rigging. We slipped along towards Falmouth and sailed smoothly past the famous Cutty Sark. I'm sure the grand old clipper tugged at her mooring chains in envy of our freedom. From Falmouth, Cornwall's largest and most famous port, which was founded by Sir Walter Raleigh, the coast extended in a wide sweep to the south to form the Lizard, a little world of its own, with fishing as its traditional industry, but now the resort of those who revel in the beauty of the Cornish coast. The coast became more rugged, but there were compensations in the form of secluded coves and lonely beaches such as only Cornwall can provide. To realize the scenic resources of the Lizard, one must disembark and proceed by land, for most of the coves are unapproachable by boat unless one knows the intricacies of the channel and the difficulties of the currents. And so at Coverack, we exchanged our Austin-engined yacht for an Austin car and continued our cruise on land. Passing Cadgwick, we reached the most southerly point in England, the Lizard, with its white lighthouse and fog siren, as warnings to the navigator to keep a respectful distance from the jagged rocks. While exploring the village, we halted to watch a local industry, the making of serpentine ware, turned from the Cornish rock and polished skillfully in a primitive lathe. Who would think of touring the Lizard and ignoring Kynance Cove? We found the famous beauty spot all but deserted, except for these water babies monopolizing a pool left by the outgoing tide. And sleepy Mullion seemed like a harbour scene from a romantic play, with its miniature quay in a cleft in the rocks. But one of the longest stretches of our voyage was still ahead, so we returned to our yacht and sailed away towards Mounts Bay, with our Austin engines quickly and smoothly propelling us forward at a steady 7 knots. And what an appetite we had for those meals aboard in the snug little saloon. Many a cork popped on our cruise, and many a tin yielded to the remorseless opener. Nor was our helmsman absent from the feast, but kept us to one course while eating another. We sailed swiftly past St. Michael's Mount, rolling along through a choppy sea. In Newlyn, the morning's catch was being sold. The fish market was full of busy buyers, and sly thieves on wings swooped to and fro, keen in both eye and appetite, ready to steal a meal at the first opportunity. If you notice a smell of fish, please put it down to the strength of our Newlyn recollections. Then on to Muzzle, with its hilly and narrow streets, the scene of many a smuggling escapade in days gone by, and now a favourite resort of artists. Near the harbour, the old salts were swapping yarns and mending their nets. How effectively, some poor fish would shortly know. From Muzzle onward, the coast again became more stern and wild, and every headland sheltered lonely coves. Rocks everywhere forbade our approaching shore. Cornwall began to assume its sternest aspect. When you tour Cornwall by car or cruise along its magnificent coast, you find it preserves its grandest scenery for the very last stage of your journey. Past many a lonely rock-guarded inlet we made our way. Many a mysterious cave, proof of the sea's unending toil, and many a lonely fishing hamlet were left behind as the scene grew wilder yet. Land's End is indeed the grand end of the delectable duchy, and close under the promontory where England gives its hail and farewell to the great Atlantic lies Sennan Cove and the glorious stretch of White Sand Bay. If any of us went bathing there, it must have been while I was asleep. So our cruise had reached its ultimate objective. England had given us a good run, but we outdistanced her at last and left the rocky pinnacles of Land's End standing like fantastic castles as we put our helm over to port, turned our head to the east, opened the throttle, and felt our brave little boat respond to the power developed by our Austin engines. Our voyage of discovery had ended, and there is but one thing more for me to tell. Always make sure that the engine is an Austin, like the engine in your car, when you go down to the sea in ships.